morning and welcome back. I'm Natalie and today we're going to be doing a bit of art journaling onto fabric. So I'm using a fabric based art journal for today and we have a couple of pages that we can do and there's a little insert here that we might do something with. So we have two types of fabric. One's quite a close weave and it's going to be ideal for stamping on. And then you've got an open weave, which is going to be more suitable for doing things like mixed media, where we're actually going to be doing put my teeth back in, embellishments to it. So, good morning, Serena, and hi, Mom. So, hello to those of you watching on YouTube, and also on Facebook, on the Pretty Gets Gritty page, and on Crafting with Pretty Gets Gritty. What is wrong with me today? Didn't put my teeth in this morning at all. Okay. So I've pulled out a few different elements that I'm going to be working with. I have some papers where I have the gel print that I've done. I have some pattern papers that we can work with. I've pulled out some stencils, so newest and probably one of the oldest. And also two of the new sets of stamps. So Strength in Numbers is this one, and that's probably the one we're going to be using the most. So don't be afraid to say hi and let me know that you're watching. Right, okay, I'm with you now. I've also pulled out some Get Chalky paints, which are the Fiver Friday. So do hop over onto the website and check those out. We're also going to be using some mediums, so you're going to want transparent gesso, gel medium for anything that you're going to be doing to your pages, and white texture paste. So I'm hoping we can apply that and have that dry before I finish streaming so that you can actually see what I'm going to do with that. You're also going to want to put something to protect your other pages in your journal, as whether it's a close weave or an open weave fabric, the items that you use can actually bleed through. So if you have any artwork either side, make sure you just put either a bit of plastic. I've got a little marker mat here that's just going to protect that. Okay, so let's crack on. So what you could do is you could start off by applying a layer of transparent gesso all over your fabric. So if you do that, you're going to lose a little bit of your texture. So I wanted to try and get some stamping done first, then we can gesso over the top, and that's going to give our
journal up a little bit.
Journal up a little bit. Let me move my paints then, just so you can see a bit better. There you go. So I've just applied this onto a nice clear block, and I'm going to go for an archival ink. So let's decide which one I'm going to go with for my papers. I'm going to go with Forget Me Not. So if you have a fabric ink pad, you could use that.
Morning, Linda.
Ah, morning, Linda. So I've got a little helper with me today, so you'll hear Ian in the background. He's manning the comments as well as watching what the camera's doing, which is nice because then I don't have to keep checking. So I'm going to ink that up nice and thoroughly. And I'm going to drop this into a corner. So it's meant to go that way up, so the numbers are all upright, but just because I just want something on that edge, I'm going to twist it around 90 degrees and I'm going to place that down.
It still looks the right way up.
It's a bit of a weird one because you've still got a couple of numbers that are up this way.
Clever thinking rather than there. Multi-use.
Yep. There's what I'm like, I'll just turn that stamp. Oh, that didn't come out very clear, did it? Let's do that again. Also, it wasn't quick enough. More ink.
Underneath not firm enough.
It might be that it's just giving a little bit too much. I haven't really got anything that I can put underneath it that's gonna. There we go. Let's try again. If it still doesn't work, then I might just get it to come out a little bit clearer. Oh. Let's have a look. That's a bit more like it. So we can see that we've got elements that we can start to pick out with our paint, but we've also got some textures that we're going to start including. Now, let's start by planning out my papers. This is so we can start to work out where our mediums are going to go. Now obviously with something like this you kind of got to keep it up almost the right way because you've got all the text on it, but I don't want to necessarily keep it in its current format, so I'm going to tear into it.
These are Lynette's papers, aren't they?
Yep, these are all Lynette's papers, so you'll be able to get those on the website. Now I'm going to actually tear down this way. I'm going to go all the way to the end of this strip, because then I can always cut it off if I need to, but let's just see how far we can go. So that's going to go up into that corner, and we can actually take that across onto this tab here. So that one will go there. And now I want something that's going to come back in the other direction. So there's no actual text on this strip here, it's all on the blue, so if I get rid of the blue I can turn it upside down. Okay. And we can save these other bits that we've torn off for other sections of our layout.
Morning Louise, happy Easter.
Yep, so I hope we're all having a lovely day. The weather is certainly gorgeous. Or at least it is here. Okay, so I just want to tear off this top bit so that we're not having a straight line running through our layout. Okay, so it's going to go down to this bottom corner. Let's tuck in that way. Yep, that looks good. So I'm not going to worry about trimming these ends off yet. It's just going to be a case of let's stick it in.
The journal is a nice size.
The journal is a lovely size, and if I can remember I will say who it's by when it comes to me. But it's about a 6x6, so just check it on the map. Yeah, about 6x6 journal. So if you want to look for something that's a similar size. And it's a good kind of size to start with. Squares are really good for beginners because then you haven't got to worry about which way round you're going, and it's nice and simple. And the size is not going to be too daunting. So to adhere it, I'm just going to use a bit of gel medium. And I do keep a little bit of, the name of it will come back to me in a minute. It's like cling film, but not cling film.
Seal and stick, or press and seal.
Press and seal, that's the one. And that's just going to help your pot stay nice and easy to open for starters, because I'm terrible for sealing my pot shut. I'm just going to put a little bit gel medium along there to start with. And
It'll
then
help keep your medium nice as well.
yeah, the idea is that it's going to keep your medium nice and wet, and at the same point you're going to be able to still get into the pot. Okay, so a little bit more under there. Now I want to put a little bit into this corner here, just there. I'm just going to push my nail in so it's going into that hinge, well, the spine of the book. There we go. Now, obviously, while this is wet, you want to make sure that your book stays open. So, have somewhere that you can actually let your books dry. Now, just because we've got these two flyaway bits, it's going to be easy to use your palette knife and your paper. And you can go into the spine like so. Take that one across that way. And I'm going to tear this one off about here. And press this one down. And again, just going to tear that off. We don't want too many cut lines, otherwise it can start to feel like it's a bit pretentious. Is that the word I'm looking for? You want it to kind of blend and have your layers interacting with each other rather than feeling like they're cut apart. A little bit more gel just underneath that one section where it's just lifting up slightly.
Morning, Sarah Lou. Yes, we're both well at the moment, aren't we?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So when you're done, just going to push that back down inside the pot and over the edge. And fingers crossed. There we go. Okay, so with that first section done, let's start to look at the different paper. And I want to start to bring in our little tab section here. So let's just tear that out. Not that little bit just there. There we go. That can go there, I think. But before I do that, I want to just put some gesso on this side here, because otherwise anything that we do put in is going to kind of seep in and just soak. So, transparent gesso. Now, transparent is really cool for locking your layers. So if you create something and you don't want to lose it, then just put the layer of gesso very carefully over the top, and that's going to seal it in. So it's going to go on, it's going to go clear. Don't need to do very thick layers of gesso, keep them nice and thin. Better to do 2 or 3 thin than try and go too thick to start with. And for lighter elements, you can actually just put your papers, your tissues, rice papers straight onto your transparent gesso without using the gel medium if you want to. So that can go up into that top section there. So it's going to go like that. So now I'm going to dip back into my gesso, go right into that corner. take it over the top. So this means that when you start to do your sprays and things, it's going to actually protect it a little bit. So this is important if you're working with something like rice paper where it might crinkle if it gets too wet. Just protect it first. There we go. Now, moving on to this side while that's drying. Now that we've done our sort of initial overlay of paper, we can start to decide which bits we want to lock. So I know I'm going to want to do a little bit of painting on my flowers, but if I do that without applying gesso over the top, you might find that things start to bleed, or you might find that you lose your outline. So I'm just going to very carefully start to lock in certain elements. So things like this texture here, I'm going to keep that because I like that there. It's also a good idea to test it on something like that, so you're making sure that your colours aren't running. I'm going to go over my flower. And again, you don't need tons and tons on your brush. So gesso is going to basically apply a key that's then going to give somewhere for your paints to stick to. But on something like fabric, you've kind of already got quite a bit of texture there anyway. So it's more if you've got papers, you're going to find that gesso really changes the surface that you're working on. I'm going to put a little bit more of these flowers here. And then just blend it out around the edges so you don't get a harsh line anywhere. Okay, there's a little bit just in there, so I'm just going to use what's left on my brush on that bit. I can go over the top of my papers like so. You can be a bit more generous with the papers to what you do over your ink. If there are any lumps and bumps, try and make sure that you get gesso both sides of them. Whether that's through a little bit of a dabbing action like I'm doing here, or just changing the angle that you're going in. Okay. Now what I will do, if I go too much further, is just give that a quick dry, just so that I can carry on. Now, if you've got a bit more time, what you can do is you can carry on going over to the next page while that's drying. I want to focus on getting at least one page done today. So let's go for our numbers. I'm going to put my stencil onto the spine here, and I'm going to get my texture paste.
You haven't done that one.
Well, this is a brand new pot, isn't it? So it's going to need some when I come to finish today. I'll try and remember to do that. So let's pick a slightly smaller palette knife, just so I can kind of get a little bit but not too much. And work that through the stencil. Now bear in mind, because you're working onto a soft surface, you can get a little bit, you're more likely to get a little bit of seepage through. So don't get too hung up on getting perfect stenciling. And pop a little bit down the bottom here too. Okay. And just while I'm here, move that over to the other side. I'm just going to do a little tiny bit down here just to pick up some of the elements there. Just be mindful of where it is on this side. Try not to put your fingers in it, but if you do, wow, it's one of those things, isn't it? Getting messy. We expect to get messy. And I'm going to peel it off carefully. Now I'm going to seal my texture paste back up before I do the next clip. And I'm going to grab a little bit of embossing glaze. And I'm going to sprinkle it over the top. Now this will work better the drier your page is underneath. So hence I wanted to give it a little bit of a dry first.
Whose glaze is that tin?
Yeah, it's Tim's.
Colour?
It's one of the new ones, it's Selvedge Patina. So this is a translucent embossing glaze, so you're going to see that white through it. And likewise, if it does go anywhere on your background, it's going to let the layers show through underneath. But you're going to want to let that texture paste actually completely dry before you try and heat the embossing glaze. Otherwise you're just going to get a bubbled mess. It's not good. So, if you don't like the feel of the embossing powder, what you can do is just use a little spoon and just sprinkle over the top. It can be a little bit harder to get a kind of randomness to it, but it's not impossible. Get the lid back on, however. There we go. And I'm going to change to Kitchen Lingo. Again, just dip a finger in. Need a bit more of that. There we go. So the idea is that when we then do our heat embossing, it's going to go a little bit like stained glass, which is another funky texture that we can include. And you don't have to get it all over your texture paste if you don't want to. If you want to just do certain elements, you can do. And finally, oh, well, I haven't opened yet.
The new red one.
This is Saltwater Taffy. So yeah, new. There we go. And on cardboard, so there we go. These always remind me of like sherbet.
Just don't eat them.
Yeah, really wouldn't recommend that. Not good for your health. Okay.
And Sarah Lou says she loves the saltwater taffy.
It is a gorgeous colour. And the difference between the oxide and the ink as well. You can do some gorgeous like almost silk inspired designs with them. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit and dry for a moment. Now, while we're working over here, let's pick another nice paper. So I've got my gel print that I can still use. So let's pull out some of that. I'm thinking this corner down here. So I'm going to literally tear into it. And then I can go, so let's go for eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You could use the same stamp again, just to cut out some of the elements, which I think I might do. And let's go for a grey ink pad this time. So that's the Archival ink watering can. Oh, what is it about me today? I can't seem to stamp for all my money. Yesterday was having a great time. Yeah, there's that. Nerves are terrible. Okay, let's see if we can get this lined up. No promises. There we go. And I can cut these out then. So I'm going to go for this one here. Sorry. Around like that. So this was gel printed onto watercolour card, so it's quite stiff. So you're going to want a strong pair of scissors to do this bit. And turn your work, not your scissors.
Joe Belton. She's just joined you.
Hello, Joe. Hope you're well.
It was a lovely surprise to find that I totally overlooked it having to.
That's okay. I think it went out as being at 11 PM instead of 11 AM at one point. I was like, no, definitely not. I'm not that much of a night owl. I used to like crafting at night when I was younger. Maybe I don't always want to behave today. So let's go and start planning where this is going to go. Pop that down there. Now I'm not going to stick it yet because we've still got this drying. So at least plan your work, then do your setting, and then we can add those bits at the end. So we've got these little bits here. Now, obviously, being in a journal, you don't want to go too 3D, which is something you want to consider when you're actually cutting out elements and things. So, let's think. That's going to go in there like that. Okay. So, go up there. That's about one side ready. Okay. Let's pop that there so I don't lose it. I'm going to cut in and miss out this one leaf down the bottom. Now this section, I'm going to actually do a little bit of tearing so that we can keep some of this background. Because obviously if you try to actually fussy cut out all those elements, it will start to be there for an awfully long time. I'm going to move that down there. So I'm going to tear this bottom section too.
Just a bit of fussy cutting. It's lovely. And seriously, I'm looking at this.
Okay. So I'm just going to tear off this top bit here as well, because that little tail bit was just a bit weird. Okay. So with those set to one side, let's hopefully be ready to do some painting. So I have Naked, Tickled and Thunder. So Naked is like a nice pale peach or skin tone, hence the colour name. You've got a nice soft pink, which is Tickled, which you can use for doing blush of cheeks if you do a lot of portrait style work like I tend to. And you have Thunder, which is like a stormy sky. So I'm going to start off with my lightest colour first. And I always keep my foils attached to my paints, just helps them keep the brush a little longer. I'm just going to grab a little paintbrush. Now, because you stamped onto fabric, you kind of get like a bit of a hit and miss texture. You don't want to try and cover it all in one go, otherwise you're going to lose where your petals are. So I'm just going to do a couple of petals in like the lighter colour. And pop my lid just loosely back on top so it's not escaping too much. I'm going to go to my darker pink, which is Tickled. I can get the foil off. There we go. You really don't need much paint. You can push that in there. Okay, go around to the next petal and we can do the same there. And we can keep following it round. So there's a dark section in there, a little bit more paint, and brush that into the centre. Swap back to the Naked, and we can highlight the edge of that petal. And because you're working wet in wet like this, you're going to find it much easier to do your blending. Okay, just going to go back and just blend that bit there. It's just looking a little bit harsh. And we can do the next couple of petals in our Naked. That's Tickled. So these paints last you ages. These are, what, a year old now?
Mm-hmm.
And still looking as if they're pretty much full.
And not to forget they're on the 5-4 digitally.
Yes. So there's a massive colour range to choose from. So go for the ones that you think you will use the most often first. Give them a good testing out, and I'm sure you will love them. These are going to dry with matte effect. You won't see it so much on things like this fabric here, but certainly when you're working on canvases and MDF, you can see that you get that nice matte effect going on. So once you started to do the first couple, you can kind of see where you're going in terms of tone if you need to make it a little bit darker, which is why I have Thunder there ready to go. So. Now Thunder is really strong by comparison with the other colours, so you're not going to want to use very much. A little's going to go a long way. If bits of your pink is still wet, just blend that in too, so you're not getting any harsh lines in that sense either. And you should have something that starts to look like you have a centre of your flower. Now, I'm going to go around the edges of these petals here. So where one petal overlaps another, you're going to want to use a smudge of that Thunder to kind of bring out the depth between each petal. We don't need to use a lot. And I have practically a dry brush, and it's literally just the slightest bit of colour across that texture. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my naked. Dip into the tickled, and now we can go back to the Thunder and we can put our shading in. Like so. So you should have something that looks like you're getting your petals building up in depth. Don't worry about the centre of your flower just yet. Just concentrate on your petals. Okay.
Sabina saying again that she's loving looking at it.
It's a really unusual surface to work on, in terms of how your colours are going to react and things like that. Because obviously, even when we work with like pre-made canvases, they typically have like a triple layer of white gesso before you even get paint anywhere near them. It's actually quite hard to find any sort of pre-made un-gessoed canvases. In actual fact, when we went on a hunt for some, we only found them in one shop, wasn't it? Do you remember?
Couldn't tell you which shop.
I could. Yeah. It was at Atlantis.
Oh, in London.
Yeah. If you ever get a chance to go there, it's a really good place to go. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere, and yeah, you start to doubt your sanity at some point, because yeah, if ever you go, you'll see what I mean. That's all I'm saying.
Not what you'd expect it to be, is it?
No. No. It's one of those places where you don't really want to be using the map to get to, isn't it? That's all I'm saying. But it's worth it. Right, back in pink. I'm going to go a little bit darker as I get towards these outer petals. So you can see a little bit more thunder kind of coming back in. And we can always then go back over the top with either a paint pen if you want that level of control, or if you want to go back in with a paintbrush, you can do. I'm just going to put a little bit of naked on the tip of that petal just there. Okay. As I go around these outer petals, I'm going to start off with thunder first, because there's going to be more dark than there is light. Because we want to make a flower look like it is actually 3D. And then back into the naked, and it's going to blend with what's on my brush anyway. So this one just here.
Not washing your brush between colours.
Nope. Nope, don't believe in washing brushes. So not when you're blending anyway. There we go. Just want that pink. Because you're going to do your colour mixing on your brush for the most part. There we go. So now we can go into our pink a little bit more. There we go. Blend that there. And a tiny touch of the naked to go on this open over there. Back to the naked. I'm going to get into this section here. There we go. Tiny bit of thunder. Just in there. And now I'm going to start building up that colour towards the middle, now that we can start to see where they're going. And hopefully it's starting to look like a bloom. So just going to wipe off what's on my brush a little bit just there. Back to the pink for the outline of that petal. Do the next one, there we go.
Morning, Joe. Noreen, sorry. And Joe.
Hello, hello. Come take a seat. So, I'm using the new stamps. So Strength in Numbers is the one I'm using at the moment. And we're just doing a little bit of painting with the Get Chalky paints, which are Fiver Friday. And just doing the spot blending on actual paintbrush. So no palette required. And getting a little bit more. And we're nearly done with that flower. Now I'm going to just add a little bit of thunder just to make that little bit of petal there just pop a little bit.
Enthusiast, what ink did you stamp with?
So it's just archival ink, so it's the Ranger one, which is Forget Me Not. So let's see if I can get that without glare. There you go. If you want to take a quick snapshot. The papers that I've used are also from Pretty Gets Gritty. I've used the number stencil with just some white texture paste. So that's kind of the thinnest texture paste that I would do. Then while that's wet, I've sprinkled in Ranger embossing powders. So it's the distressed ones in Kitchen Flamingo, Salvage Pattern Hut and Saltwater Taffy. And that's drying before I can emboss it. Then I've done just the painting with the Get Chalky. Okay, so at this point I can then move on to my smaller flowers, so that you can start to pick those up. Now you might not want to put the thunder in particular on these smaller ones, just because it can otherwise look a little bit overpowering. So I'm just going to go and do my petals, do it one flower at a time, and then dip into Tickled and look to the centre. I'm going to go back to the Naked, which is the peachy colour, and round we go again. So the flowers we did our transparent gesso over the top before we painted. Now down here, because we've got a little bit of interaction with our texture pastes and therefore where our powders are, you just want to be a bit mindful of avoiding that if possible. So it could either be that you don't paint those bits, or it could be that you just leave those bits until after you've set your actual embossing powder. So now I'm just going to go back and just touch any areas I think just need that little extra light now that we've kind of got our first layers in place. You know, I haven't done anything with the leaves yet. I'm just kind of toying with the idea about how that would look when I actually put the leaves in, whether I want to do that or whether I want to do something else. So it could be that I end up spraying or painting. And thank you, Serena. Okay, so I think if we did just the thunder into the leaves, it might help it kind of pop out. Could you just get me the blue from up there? There should be a blue one.
Chalk paint or?
Just it might not be chalk necessarily. No, that's pigment powder. It's one of the little ones. There should be a little blue one on there, I think. Therefore I am. I might be wrong.
Miami.
That's the one.
It's even a chalk paint, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm going to go for Miami. Wasn't originally going to, but let's go for it. Okay.
I never saw that.
Okay. So, just because it needs a little bit of a mix, let's grab a colour shaper. Actually, they're quite good for mixing. So if you do find they separate a little bit, just give it a good stir before you get started and you'll be fine. There we go. Try and scrape off as much of that as possible, and then I can just use what's left. Okay. So I'm going to start off with my blue. This might seem like a bit of a weird choice for a leaf colour, but when we start to blend in the thunder over the top, you'll see why I've done it. So, very lightly, I'm going to go with thunder right up against the petal edge. Then we can go down the leaf and we can follow the veins. Then by the time we've done that, it's start to mix on the brush so we can blend that out. Like so. Now this is going to be one of those occasions where I might just need to paint, actually wash my brush, but see how we go. I'm just going to go round the petal, down the side, round the leaf. Let's see how it goes. Oh, not too bad. So I can blend that in.
Sediment in this one.
Oh, that's in need of empty.
I can do that quickly. I might need some
Yeah. I have got one here if I need it. Here. Okay. And we're going to go back and we're going to put those veins back in again. So, down the middle, cross to the side, cross to the side, and back out this way. So even if you lose all your stamping, you know roughly where you're going. And take that down that way. And this time, because our leaf's again kind of facing upwards, I'm going to start off from a vein and taking that grey up to the tip. And then right down in here, we can go down into that thunder, like so. So we're starting to build up those colours. It's looking very retro, isn't it? It's weird because you look at it one way and when you're actually doing it, and then you look up and it's like you see it totally different. Perspective and all that. So I'm going to start up at the top here.
It's very blue and yellow. It looks something.
There we go.
Do you want some water? Are you alright?
I will do in a minute because all these brushes are going to need to go into water to clean. So, I wouldn't usually advise leaving your brushes dirty for too long. So, clean them between each kind of session.
Project.
Yeah. Well, sometimes area review projects as well. So I'm just going to do a little bit more thunder on this one so that we get a bit more of a definition on where this leaf goes. It's just there. That's not too bad. I think I might just leave it like that because I don't want to do too much. Once we've done our heat setting, I might come back and do those two little flowers just here. But I think that's probably looking pretty good, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just do that leaf there. Yeah, that makes sense. So, and there. Just literally using up what's left on my paintbrush now. There we go. And maybe just that leaf there.
Are you fiddling again?
I am fiddling. I'm also trying to avoid the embossing powder. Just blend that with the grey there, and then we can pop that. Go. Yeah. There we go. Chopped up. Stop. So your colour shaper can just dip in water and stay there for a little bit. Brushes, you tend to have a little less forgiving time when it comes to leaving them in water, so generally a good idea to just dunk them and let them dry. Okay. So before I go too far, I'm just going to put the lid back on the plate, because otherwise you could have a bit of a mess going on, especially when you start heat setting things, and we don't want to dry our paints out too. And hopefully, fingers crossed, our texture paste should be set by now. So let's see if we can get away with it. Was it?
Michael says hi.
Hi, Michael. Okay. Going to give it a quick roll from the back too, just because we're working on top of like a plastic sheet, so you're more likely to get a gathering of moisture at the back. And
Looks like you're hiding in the background.
so your embossing powder should get like a sheen to it when it's set over the top. So let's see if I can get it to pick it up. May not be able to, because you're kind of relying on the light hitting the right angle, but you should have like a little shine to it. Thank you, Serena, and have a good day. All I'm going to do, just so you know, is just adhere the flowers, and I think I'm going to call it a day at that. So I'm not going to do too much more to the background, because otherwise there's no point doing it on fabric. You still want that fabric to show through. So let's do a little bit of gel medium, get the right one.
Not texture paste.
Yeah, don't use texture paste. Well, it may work. You don't want it that thick. Right. I'm going to pop that just there. And while that's still wet, I'm just going to pop that in if I need to. I'm going to pop that sort of back into that corner a little bit. Don't want to cover up too much of that nice drip. Okay. There we go. And that's going to go up to the top and there. And there we go. Like so. And I think the last thing to do, just to finish that bit off, is I'm going to grab a little bit of Tickled. And no, I actually don't want to dry my brush out. I still want it to be quite wet. I'm just going to do a little bit into my lid, so it's quite watery. And I'm just going to go along this torn edge, just here, and that's going to blend and pull that colour back through, like so, while highlighting that kind of torn edge effect. And likewise, if you want to do a little bit of shading to the flower, you can do. You can see that it's really thin, really watery, and you're just going to get like a hint of colour. So whereas if we were to paint that chalk paint on in its full consistency, it's going to knock out your outline. Because we watered it down, it's just going to go over the top. You haven't even got to be the world's best painter for this bit. It's just following an edge. Don't even have to keep it in the lines. Okay. And there we go. So, nice soft subtle. What I will do when this is all set is just tidy up this bottom edge a little bit, just so this bit isn't hanging off quite so much at the bottom. But that's not bad. And look at that. An hour. Yes! I actually stopped.
An hour and 5 minutes.
Huh?
12:02.
12:02, that's not 5 minutes.
Well, by the time you wrapped up for this. Yeah.
Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. If there's any questions, then do pop them in the comments now, or if you want to message me, you can do. And I will let you know what I did. There you go. So you can have a look closer. And what you can do is when this is all dry, you can go back in with like a watercolour pencil or a pastel pencil and just deepen these shadows so that that flower really pops.
Could you use something like your, not necessarily your paint pens, but like one of the black permanent pens to go around the outside?
Yeah,
so
like a fine liner.
Yeah, like a fine, just do like an
yeah,
outside
fine liners you can use as long as you haven't put any sort of like pastels on your surface. So fine liners really don't like the chalky dry pastels as opposed to the oil ones.
Just a thought. If you wanted to give that flower a bit more definition, I think you
Yeah.
make it pop with it.
Yeah, if you wanted to outline it again, yeah, you could do. See, I think it's going to need to dry just a little bit more, but we'll see. There we go. Just to tidy it up. Not that it's bugging me or anything, honest. So you can see that we've got that tinted embossing over our texture paste. You've got the tint of the watered down chalk paint over our flower, and then you've got full on chalk paint over those. So, take care for now, and I will see you next week.